Okay, so today we are going to learn the steel mace 360. Now the 360 is kind of like, it's a complex movement, but it's fundamental, just like the kettlebell swing is in kettlebell training. All right, but first, before we get into it, I'll show you what a 360 is first. So here's our steel mace, and our 360 looks a little something like that. All right, first of all, before we get into anything, the safety considerations. I'm going to go through technique as we go. Technique has a lot to do with this, as does our breathing. So maintaining a nice neutral spine, making sure that we're rotating, that we're using momentum instead of muscling over the equipment. So there's a lot of technique involved, which I'll get into in the teaching points. But the other thing, and probably the most important thing to remember with the steel mace, is that it is a weapon. It historically is a weapon used in battle. So when you are swinging this thing around, you need to have respect for the fact that it can cause injury, and it is designed to injure someone or hurt someone. So we are going to use the steel mace in terms of fitness, so that we are going to show you the ways in which to use it and control it, but you will need sufficient space around you to make sure that you don't injure anybody else. The other thing to think of when we're doing the steel mace is that you do need, even though it's a great tool for getting shoulder mobility happening, we do need a little bit of mobility to start with, and we need to make sure that we've got some good thoracic rotation happening as well. If you are stiff in the shoulders or you have no rotation in your thoracic spine, I would suggest working on that before doing the 360. And you can actually, there are exercises which I'm going to show you shortly where you can regress to work on those. Now, the other thing to think about when learning the 360 is the weight of your steel mace. It's like any exercise that we do, we need to progressively overload so that we don't injure ourselves. Now we can actually start, the steel mace generally starts at like a 2 or 3 kilo. This one here is a 3 kilo, this one's a 4 kilo, and then you need to gradually work your way up to heavier steel maces. You can practice the movement of the hands make in a steel mace even without a mace. So start as light as you can and then work your way up from there. And we need to master the fundamentals, which is where I'm going to get into next. The fundamentals that we need to start with a steel mace are what we call the pendulum, the metronome, and halos. Now the halo is one of the ones that you can use to start off with no weight. So having your hands just clasped in front like this, and we're going to go across the body, around the head, and back down. Across, around, and back down. Now practicing this will help you to get that mobility through the shoulders, and to practice as well getting our triceps into full extension. When we're doing a steel mace, our triceps need to be in full extension at the back, when our steel mace is at the back, and our hands low enough. We don't want our hands up high, we want them down low enough that our thumbs thereabouts sort of touch the top of our shirt. So we need that full extension, and we need to make sure that our elbows look like they're kind of bullhorns, and that we've got that full extension. So you can use the halo without weight to start with to get that. So, you know, doing something like 3 rounds of 10 on each side. You can use that as one of the tools to start off with. The other fundamental that you might want to learn, that you will need to learn, is the metronome. So we're going to start, let me start with the lighter weight so I can show you. The metronome. So when we hold the steel mace, have a look here, we need to make sure they're a little bit off the bottom, and then our grip is not solid grip, that we're just gently holding the steel mace so that we can move it around, okay? Especially when it's in the back position. So here, we're going to practice the metronome. So we're here in what we call the front rack position, or what some people might call the warrior stance. And this is quite a short 3 kilo mace, so it's kind of at my head height, but generally you would have it so that it's sitting just above your head. Now what we do with the metronome is we can go from one side to the other. So we're saying 3 o'clock, no, actually sorry, 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock. 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Notice how I'm counteracting that balance. So I'm just exaggerating a little bit, but we're moving slightly different to the direction that the globe, this being the globe here, we're moving our shoulders away from the globe. So practicing this will not only help you to build up the strength in the wrists here and practice that just gripping with the hands. So you don't want to be solid like this. You want to be just gripping so that you can sort of slide the mace up and down. So just enough that it's not going to slide through. And there's your metronome. The metronome is what we use to start the 360. So when I start a 360, I do what I call a blocking movement, which is coming to here. Coming to here. So that metronome is what's going to help us to get there initially. And I'm going to go through that blocking in a minute. All right. The other exercise, or the fundamental to learn, is the pendulum. So taking the still mace to your shoulder, sliding it over the back, and this is where you can practice those hands being low, or to your top of your t-shirt, and your elbows, or your triceps rather, being in full extension, and we can give that still mace some swing at the back. Now with this, again, your grip is just enough that it's not going to slip out of your hands, but not so tight that you can't get any movement in the wrists. And we're going to slightly counteract the direction that still mace is going in with our body. And what you want to aim for here is eventually to be able to get that globe up to what we call, the 3 and the 9 position. So we're going to get it up to here and up to here. That'll make more sense in a minute when I go through the teaching cues, but those are the fundamentals, and even what we call the regressions to a 360, okay? So learn those first, the halo, so you're getting the hands going around the head, the metronome at the front, so that you get the feel of that thoracic rotation, and then the pendulum at the back, which gives you that feeling of momentum coming up to the 3 and the 9 o'clock at the back, so that we can use that when we get into the 360. You will need that momentum. So try those first as your fundamentals, and then we're going to get into the 360. I will use my 4 kilo now. So the first thing you want to look at is your stance in the 360. So if you look at my feet here, they're just slightly outside of hip width. I have my tailbone tucked under a little bit, so I haven't got an arch in my back. I've got a nice neutral spine, my core is locked on, my glutes are locked on, and once I'm holding the steel mace, my lats will activate and shoulders will pull down as well. So let's have a look at that. Picking the mace up, we're going to put our hand underneath here and bring it up to what we call the front, or the rack, or perhaps the warrior stance, a warrior position. Okay, have a look here. I've got my hands one below and one above. When we initiate a 360, the hand that's on top is the hand that's on top. If you point that top finger, that's the direction that the globe is going to travel in to start with. So that's the shoulder that you're going to go over. So it's actually the opposite hand on top to the opposite shoulder that you're going to push over. All right, so that's your stance, and that's the rack position. The grip I've just explained, and I was explaining before that we've got one hand on the bottom and one hand on the top. Now, if you are just starting out and you feel like the mace that you've got is too heavy, you can choke that grip up so that you're not at the end of the mace, but rather up a little bit higher on the mace. That makes the momentum or the leverage here a lot easier to cope with. It won't feel as heavy and it won't feel like it's getting away from you. And then gradually bring your hands down so that you can make that more challenging. And again, making sure that the grip is not so tight that you can't have that steel mace slip around in your hand. So you need to make sure that you are able to have enough grip to control it, but not so much that you're not going to be able to slide the mace through the hand. As I mentioned before in the halo, when we get over the back, we want to make sure that our triceps are in full extension and that our thumbs rather, are touching our lower, the top of our shirt. We don't want our hands up here at the back. We want them nice and low. To remove it from the back, if you are just practicing, take one hand behind and pull it out through the bottom. I'm going to show you what I use to initiate this movement, which is the 4 Ps. We've got our sorry, let me show you. We've got our push first. I like to talk about, actually let me take a step back, that's why I was faltering there. Let me take a step back to what I call the block, which I was just talking about before. The block, when we initiate, you just practice that metronome over and over. We're going to use that metronome to start with. And what I mean by the block is we're going to slightly rotate our shoulders and bring our hands so that they come across our body like that. So it's kind of like you're blocking or even creating a window. We can do that with a little bit of practice here by going across our body like so. So we can come across like this and like this. So start here, bring your elbow up, across your body. Make sure that it's not the elbow just coming, make sure the whole body comes with it. So we're going to come across the body and across the body. Across the body, across the body. So see how we're blocking our face. So we're going to use that metronome movement that we practiced before and making sure that we're using our arms coming across our body in what I call a block. Blocking, say, a punch or something. All right, so you can practice that on its own as well, just so you get that thoracic rotation happening. Now from that block, we're going to go into what I call the push. Now that's where this metronome comes back into play. So we're going to come up, we're going to start to block, and we're going to push. Now, this is where a lot of people, when they push into a 360, they tend to push backwards and not out to the side. We need to make sure that we push out to the side, up and out to the side. So we're aiming for that 10 and 2 position. 10 and over. So that's the push. Push. Again, push. The push is not backwards, and that's where a lot of people get the steel mace hitting their bottom. So let me just show you that from the side. We are doing a push to the side, and as you can see, it's traveling past me like I'm in a corridor. What it's not doing is going push back and hitting me in the bottom. Okay? So you need to make sure you've got the push right. So the push is the first thing. The pendulum is the second thing, which is that corridor at the back. So once we've got the push happening, push over and just leave it there. Just let it swing in the pendulum. And then bring it back over the way you came. All right, that's not the 360, that's just a little drill for you. So practice the push and then going through the corridor on the side so you can see what I'm talking about. Push out to the side and through the corridor at the back. Okay? What you don't want is a push backwards and then you have to try and get the momentum going. You want to use the momentum by pushing out to the side and just let the steel mace take its own weight and do a pendulum behind you. So we've got the push, the pendulum, and now we have the pull. The pull is getting it back over the shoulder on the opposite side to where you push it. So in this situation here, I've pushed over this shoulder So I'm going to pull over this shoulder. Now, another mistake people make here is pulling it straight over, just the same as they push it straight back over. You don't want to muscle the 360, you want to allow the momentum to take the globe up to about a 9 o'clock position, and then you're going to use your thoracic rotation and that block movement to bring it over the shoulder. So have a look at that. We've got our block, our push, our pendulum, and then our pull. So our pull, as you can see, I waited till the steel mace got to about 9 o'clock, the very top of the momentum before it starts to fall down, and I use that and I just redirect it over my shoulder using a little bit of rotation. What I don't do is bring it over straight. So I need to make sure I use that pendulum to my full advantage at the back. I wait for it to float and then I pull it over in the blocking or thoracic rotation movement. So again, block, push, pendulum, pull. Block, push, pendulum, pull. Push, pendulum, pull. Push, pendulum, pull. Okay, great. And then the last bit is the pause, the 4 Ps. Push, pendulum, pull, and pause. We need to make sure that we come back to the center after we've done it, make sure our lats are engaged, and we go again. So we're starting here, breathing in, breathing out, and bringing it out to the front here, making sure that it's our navel. At our navel, our shoulders are down, our lats are engaged, ready to go again. Good. Nice. Okay. So as I mentioned, some of the errors that we get in a 360 is not allowing that full swing at the back, so not allowing that full pendulum, and the pulling forward and sending it backwards in this plane instead of in this plane. So we want to make sure that when we push out to the side, let it fall, or what we call a dump, let the pendulum happen, and then let it float, and then we pull or redirect that weight over our shoulder. So just watching that again, we allow it to go over, we allow the pendulum. So what you could do is you could actually take it over and just let the pendulum feel that weight and then pull it over after a couple of swings so that you can feel that pendulum movement. When I teach this, I often, if someone is struggling with this, I often will get them to do that. I'll get them to push into the pendulum position, just get them to do a few pendulums until they can feel that globe coming up to that 9 o'clock position, and then using that float to pull it back over, and usually that corrects that muscling over of the 360. And last but not least, we need some progressions to look forward to. So some of the things, so the 360 is used as a transition into different movements. We can use a 360 to get ourselves to change grip. Perhaps we want to do a lunge, or we might want to do change grip and do some squats. And then to get the globe onto the other side for the next squat, we would do another 360 and bring it over for that. So it's used as transitions. You can do it as, you can later on take this into things like mills, which are a little bit of a cross-body swing into the 360. So we've got mills, and you can do single-handed 360s as well. So when you're doing single-handed 360s, you might want to go a bit lighter because you're using one hand, not two. And there's no harm in actually progressing up to that with some different finger or hand placements at the bottom to help you. But a single 360 is over the top. Oh, I forgot to take my glasses off before I was teaching this. Now, if you can work up to those with just doing some hand changes at the bottom, having even just 2 fingers there just to help guide it over, okay? I recommend going lighter when you're starting single 360s so that you work your way up to it, because doing it with the weight that you're using for two hands is going to feel very heavy. Alright, so there you have it. That is the Steel Mace 360.